So a very big welcome to you all this afternoon. Welcome to our Coaching Cafe. It's Natalie Ashdown here with you. And today we are looking at shifting underperformance. This is the first of a three-part series we are running on underperformance. So you can check in with us over the next couple of weeks to pick up parts 2 and parts 3. So as I mentioned, our agenda for today, we're going to be looking at the different ways of shifting underperformance in the workplace. This is actually one of our most popular topics. Last time we ran this webinar, we had heaps and heaps of people jumping on the line. It really is an important topic that we need to focus on. This came around because often in our coaching workshops, like when we're delivering the certificate for in workplace and business coaching, some people start to say, well, this coaching is already great and I really get where you're coming from, but what do you do with people who are underperforming? The conversation starts to move to a conversation around, but what do we do with the people who are underperforming? What do we do with the bottom 5 or 10%? So that's why we wanted to use this time together to change our approach to conversations, to look at how we can focus on coaching to do that. If you are new to the Coaching Cafe, welcome. We get together every Friday around lunchtime, and that's 12 noon Melbourne time, daylight savings time at the moment. And we're all about creating a community, sharing our learned experience and having some thought-provoking conversations. And these coaching cafes are designed to be a regular update, a regular opportunity to keep our coaching skills alive. So welcome to you all if you're new, and welcome back to our regulars. I really look forward to our conversation. You can interact with me by typing messages into the chat box. So let's go for it. When we think about the benefits of having conversations, particularly performance conversations, I'm picking up the research from the Right Management Group. The link there is for you, Global Career Conversations and of 2016. And in this, they found that empowering an employee to be more proactive in crafting the next steps of their career fosters more than just engagement. So what this is really talking about, and the way that we apply this to the work we're doing, is where we are having coaching conversations that focus on performance and career conversations in the workplace. We can expect a higher level of engagement. We can expect a higher level of people who are likely to share their ideas, more likely to stay with their current employer. And it says here, I would be more likely to look for career opportunities for career growth at my current employer. So more likely to look for opportunities within the current employment than hitting websites to look for opportunities outside the organization. So whilst this research was specifically around career conversations, we are seeing the same application to performance conversations in the workplace, particularly where they focus on careers. And there's a lot of other good research out there that you can pick up that actually show the benefits of having strong performance conversations. So when it comes to shifting underperformance, however, there's 3 or 4 ideas that I want to share with you. And the first one is that we really, from a coaching point of view, need to think about changing our wording and our focus of the conversation. This idea really started to come to me a while ago when I was listening to people describing underperformance in the workplace. And what I was hearing is people saying, what do you do with underperformers? I've got a person who's underperforming. What do we do with them? And a couple of people actually said to me, I like to sit down with my people and keep it real and discuss underperformance. So a conversation might start off with, we need to discuss your underperformance, or let's discuss your underperformance. And this afternoon, I want to suggest to you that we actually change our wording and our focus. So if you are coaching your managers and team to work on shifting underperformance, then the first thing I really encourage you to do is coach them around changing their wording and changing their focus. And what does this look like? Well, as you can see here on the slide, what I've done is I've chopped out the word underperformance. So I've deleted the word underperformance and we've slightly changed the wording on these sentences. Now, sometimes, I get accused of wordsmithing, but this is actually reframing. I'm not just wordsmithing and finessing things. We really are reframing the wording and our focus, and that's where we're going to get the change we need. Well, that's where we can start to get the change we need. Let me know if any of this is resonating with you by popping a message into the chat box. So rather than saying what do you do with underperformers, we like to say, what do you do with people who need to shift, lift, or raise their performance? What we want when we think about it is we want people to shift, lift, or raise their performance. That's what we're focused on. So rather than saying underperformance, because then we're only focused on underperformance, you get what you get, focused on underperformance. Let's talk about what we really want, which is a change or a shift or a lift or a raise in performance. So rather than saying I've got a person who's underperforming, let's say I have a person who needs to shift, change, lift, or raise their performance. I don't mind what word you actually use, and feel free to type in words that you can actually use, but we are doing a very, very deliberate reframe. Now, when I started doing this in the coaching workshops, I actually watched people make this reframe, and it was quite powerful. So they're going, yeah, so when we're talking about underperformers, I mean people that need to shift their performance. It is actually a brain fry. It's a real reframe that we're doing, and it's super important. Rather than sitting people down and saying, let's discuss your underperformance, that's not going to lead to motivation. It's going to lead to defensiveness. It's not a conversation that I particularly want to have, or the person who's receiving the conversation particularly wants to be engaged in. Let's sit down and discuss a shift in performance. I love that word. Let's sit down and discuss a shift in performance. Let's sit down and discuss how we can lift your performance, or raise your performance, or change your performance, or build on the things that you need to do. Anything like that really makes a difference. And so I know that I'm kind of laboring the point, but I think that one of the most important things we can do is delete the reference to underperformance and start really focusing on what we want. Let me know if that is resonating with you, if you've got any thoughts or comments you'd like to share. Very happy that you type away in the chat box. So another thought around changing the wording and our focus is, rather than saying, let's discuss your underperformance, let's try some different words. And you can coach managers, you can coach people within the workplace to change these words and work out what works for them. So we change from let's discuss your underperformance to I want to partner with you to help you shift your performance, or I want to work with you to help you shift your performance from where you are now to where you need to be. And I'd like to discuss the options of how you're going to get there to be high performing in your role. Now, everyone that's done the GROW model can see that all I'm using here is the framework of the GROW model. I want to partner with you to shift your performance from where you are now to where you need to be. And I want to discuss with you the options to get there so that you can be high performing in your role. And at this point, I normally get questions around, but what if they don't see that they're underperforming? What if they're overrating themselves? What if they've got a blind spot around their underperformance? And they're really good questions. I'd like to suggest to you actually that you can use this script for the same purpose. So I need to talk to you about how we can shift your performance from where you are now to where you need to be. So you can have a discussion around this is where you need to be. That's the goal. That's where you need to be. And this is where you are now. So there's actually a feedback conversation that we're having there, and we're putting the performance, what's actually happening, and the reality on the table when we have that discussion. So we're not skirting around reality. We're not kind of singing kumbaya and skipping through the daisies. We're actually putting the reality on the table, but we're putting the reality on the table in a way that actually helps people move forward, because we're defined where we need them to be and what high performance looks like. I've had people use this little script. It's just the GROW model, and I've had them text back and say it's made a massive difference. So that's why I'm really confident in sharing these ideas with you, because I know that they actually make a difference. It does take a mindset change though. It does. We do need to be coaching people to sit down and think about, what do they actually really want? What does high performance look like? Where are we now? And then we brainstorm the ideas to get there. So the second idea I've already started to talk about, changing our mindset and changing our approach to conversations. And I do love this little Dilbert cartoon. For those of you that are listening rather than seeing the slides, the pointy head boss says to the worker, "Here's your annual performance review, Tina." And he says, "I focused on your performance for the past 2 weeks because I don't remember anything farther back." And she says, "I was on annual leave for the past 2 weeks." And he says, "No time to talk. I need to go over here and motivate some more people." So that is not the way to do, obviously, a performance review. And I do laugh about it, but we do have a lot of performance reviews going on out there in the workplace, where it's an annual performance review and it's a tick and flick process. So we need to move away from just an annual performance review where people are cutting and pasting parts of the job description to write goals and doing the tick and flick. It's not actually achieving anything in terms of what a performance review needs to achieve. And everybody, I can see everyone on the line. I know you know that, but it's worth pointing it out. So what we're doing is we're changing our approach. We are moving away from performance reviews, which are annual events, where there's lack of preparation, where there's a lot of lack of enthusiasm, and where there's unplanned discussions that are often rushed or rescheduled. Now, these unplanned discussions that are rushed and rescheduled, they're a big issue as well, because booking a performance review or performance conversation and then rushing it or having to reschedule, I think is just as bad as not having them at all. So we need to move away from annual events and lack of preparation. And we need to move towards regular conversations and dynamic work plans, dynamic goals that we can focus on and update or recheck in once every month or every 8 weeks, something like that. We need to move towards a team member taking responsibility. Now, this is a very big point, actually, because quite often when it comes to people who need to shift their performance, it's the manager that takes on all the stress of that, where really we want the team member to take responsibility. We want to move towards breaking the conversation down into manageable chunks, and that then encourages communication and builds trust over time. And I know I can see the people on the line, you know this, but we really want to re-emphasize it with the people that we're coaching, using our practical coaching frameworks to have those conversations. Peter, thanks for your comment here. He says it's good to discussing dissonance between where they want to be and where they are now is handy. Yes, so thinking about that dissonance, that uncomfortableness about where they want to be and where they are now. He says, but begin with where they want to be in different areas. Yeah, I agree with you. I find it good to work with staff to ID or to identify what fills that dissonant space. Thank you. And that is really having a great discussion, isn't it, about where we want to move, what we want to move towards, and we have that conversation together. Thank you. When we are thinking about the coaching approach, we are moving away from remedial discussions. Performance conversations do not have to be remedial conversations. They don't have to be the annual conversations where we sit down with people. We want to move away from telling, directing, eroding confidence and unmotivation, where people are unmotivated within the workplace. We want to move away from, and as I said, I know there's a lot of great coaches on the line, so we want to help people that we're coaching to move away from a focus on weaknesses, a focus where the employee a focus on what the employee is not doing. We also want to move away from where a scenario where the manager writes the plan. And I see this going on quite a bit in the workplace. The manager's taking responsibility for the underperformance. The manager is doing all the work, and the manager is writing the plans. We want to move away from discussions about why you haven't done this and banging our heads up against the brick wall. We want to move towards high performance and what we want to see, which is what Peter's talked about. We want to move towards coaching discussions where people are taking accountability for their own performance. They're taking responsibility for their own performance, where they're feeling more confident, more motivated around their own performance. And what that means is, practically, I really believe, for what it's worth, the employee or the person we're coaching should write the plan. So if it's the person who needs to shift and lift and raise their performance, it's that person that needs to write their plan. They need to write things down in small, achievable goals and chunks, and then they need to report back on their own performance. And I think once they take responsibility for it, they are being accountable, they're starting to get some achievements on the board, then that actually builds the confidence and the motivation. Now, this might not sit quite right within your organizational work processes. It's quite often the manager writing the plan. I did a coaching workshop, and they were very clear that it's the they were very clear that when they were doing this kind of work and having performance conversations, it was the manager that had access to a software system, and they had to enter information into that software system. So what was restricting the process of the employee really taking responsibility was that it was only the manager that had access to the software system where all the goals were being written, where performance plans and conversations were being stored. So they did have to go away and have a think about that, and think about, well, how can we give access to people? How can we give them access to their own plans? And how can we give them access to updating their own plans? And it sounds totally obvious, doesn't it? But until we did this coaching workshop and really had a good discussion about it, they didn't actually realize that it was the software that was holding back the whole process. So we do have to think about, how can we build responsibility in the employee for their own plans? How can we build responsibility in the employee for their own performance? And how can we coach them around that? Thanks. Peter's jumped in again. He says, from an organisational perspective, if the preferred future has been collaboratively identified, yes, very important, collaboratively identified, it can easily shape the conversation. Getting to what we worked, getting to what we worked together to identify, from where the employee believes they are currently and where the evidence shows that they are. Yes, that's really great as well. Thank you. So that's the idea. We really are moving towards, and we want to make sure that performance conversations are focused on collaboration, that we're doing it together. Absolutely. And shaping the conversations accordingly. So the third idea, and this will be familiar to you all, is to think about conversations, coaching, and feedback. And there's a little tool that we actually use. This is a little tool that we use that's actually come from software technology like Agile, Sprint technology. It's a little matrix that is so simple. And when we're having that performance conversation, it's so easy to draw up a little grid, like a little 2x2. Everyone that knows me knows that I'm mad for a 2x2 matrix. And what we're going to be discussing and talking, and the little framework we can use to give each other, to have this feedback and to have this discussion, is to simply talk about what we need to see more of and what we need to see less of, what we need to start doing and what we need to stop doing. So the conversation and this little tool can be used so simply to say something along the lines, when we think about your performance or when we think about what you're achieving in the workplace, there's a few things that I need you to be doing more of. And I would really like you to start doing X, Y, Z. I think we need to have a think about what you need to do less of and what you need to stop doing. So I need you to actually stop doing the following, do less of this, and start doing X, Y, Z. So you can use this little tool as a very direct conversation, actually. Using it as a feedback tool and a feedback model is really effective as well. So we just are going to introduce this little tool in amongst our script to say, I'd like to talk to you about how you can shift, lift, and raise your performance. And what I would like to see is more of this, and for you to start doing X, Y, Z. What do you think? What are the options? How can you move forward on that? So if we're giving the feedback because the person's got blind spots around this, we can use this little script. And I need to share with you that you need to stop doing X, Y, Z. So we're actually saying stop. We need to stop this. And I think it works very effectively. You can actually use this little tool. It's a simple little 2x2 matrix, as you can see. You can use this little tool actually for a bit of self-coaching. I actually use this for myself. I like to draw up just on an A4 piece of paper, 4 boxes, just 2 lines down the middle. And I like to write more of, less of, start and stop as headings, just like you see here. And then I'm thinking about, across my work, but you can also think about it in other areas of your life as well. What do I need to do more of? I need to do more sleeping. I need to start going to bed earlier. I need to do less staying up late at night. And I need to stop working after a certain hour. So you can actually, that's just a simple example, but you can use this for many different scenarios. And it's a very nice way of actually working for yourself. And it's a very nice way of actually coaching people. So simple. We've got a couple of more questions here. Sorry, Alice, I realised the question answer came up here. She says, can you provide me more details on how to manage a situation where an employee has a blind spot to their performance challenges, particularly for employees who have been underperforming for an extended period, but due to a range of reasons, the issues have not been addressed? Yes, that is very tricky, isn't it? And we do see that in the workplace, Alice. I can 100% understand what you're talking about here. So we often see people where, they've been passed from manager to manager. Somewhere along the line, the performance should have been addressed, but we might see it in defence, for example, where a person is posted. So for a period of time, they haven't been performing particularly well, and someone might have started working on it or been too busy to work on their performance, and they've been posted. So they get posted to the next person, or they get a new job, or whatever happens. These kind of things happen all the time in the workplace. And so for some reason, you've inherited a person where you know that they're underperforming, but this might be the first time that they've ever received the feedback. So I think that's where we can, as Alice has picked up now, she says, I think we can use start, stop, less of, more of, answers her question. Yeah. I think that's that little script we had at the beginning, and then using start, stop, more of, less of addresses that. If they really do have a blind spot, we can actually state it using start, stop, more of, less of. So I need you to start. What was an example we had recently? So we had a person who was continually chopping off someone in a meeting. I need to share with you that I'd like you to start listening a bit more in the conversations and wait for people to actually finish their sentences. Wait for people to start offering ideas and solutions before you jump in. You need to particularly make sure and stop chopping people off, because I can see it's causing some frustration. So even using start, stop for that kind of little feedback example is a great opportunity. Peter says, can this option be used in a militant, unionist environment where it's dangerous to say, I need you to stop doing? Now, that's a very good question. I haven't specifically had experience using this with unions directly, but I have done quite a bit of coaching around this area. And what I've been advised is around that, Peter, is that we should stick with the more of, less of. So I'd like to see more of this, and I'd like to see less of this. And of course, start and stop, you need to be in rapport. So if you just start saying, stop doing this, stop doing this, stop doing this, stop doing this, we are going back to that underperformance framework and underperformance mindset. So we're using this as a way of doing what you described earlier, focusing on where we want to be, what we need to start in order to see that, and what we need to see more of and less of in that regard. So yeah, it's a very good point, actually. We just want to pick up the situation and the context and the people we work with. So everything that I share has to have that situation wrapper around it and the context wrapper around it as well. He said, agreed, great suggestion. Wow, you've missed out on the fun. Yes, I've had some pretty full-on discussions to help people prepare for those discussions, but not actually been in them myself. So yes, I'm sure there's a lot of fun going on there, and I'm sure you're doing great coaching as well. Yeah. So as I mentioned, we're talking about shifting underperformance. The way we're going to do that is by getting rid of the words underperformance. Let's talk about shifting, lifting, raising performance. Let's talk about what I need to see more of. And the way that we do this is we can use this for feedback, but the way we actually coach the person around this is just by asking the question. In order to lift your performance, in order to shift your performance, in order to achieve what we want to achieve. So this is where, Peter, people have used these little scripts with unions and other people who are resistant, if there's resistance, to say, I'd like to talk with you and work up some options about what we need to do more of, or what we need to see more of. When we're thinking about what we want to achieve, when we're thinking about how we can achieve these goals, what do we need to do more of? What do we need to do less of? I've used this with teams that are not getting along together, where they really need to have a good think about how they're performing as a team, and it works really well just on flip chart paper and brainstorming. So lots of ways you can use the little tool. Don't forget your reframing as well. So I know we're hard on our time now, so don't forget your reframing. Everything that we've really talked about today is just one big reframe or a series of reframes. So that's really how we're focusing on turning people from being below the line or below performance to raising their performance. So as always, think about a couple of the takeaways you can take from the webinar. Contact us if you've got more questions or thoughts or comments. You could even run that little 2x2 for yourself as well. So if you're working on a big project and you want to shift, lift or raise your performance, right? If you want to shift, lift or raise your performance in a task that you're doing over the next week or whatever it might be, then you can do your little 2x2. It's also a really great opportunity to communicate that 2x2 with your team. And I've done that a few times as well. I've said to my team, I need to shift, lift and raise my performance in this area. And this is what I'd like to start, stop, do more of, less of, and I need your support. Can you support me? Can you help me work on that? So sharing your little 2x2s with your team or coaching someone to do that is a great opportunity as well. So let me just pause for a second, see if there's any other questions, thoughts, comments you might have. Great. Well, just drawing your attention also to the opportunity we have here. Open Doors now delivering mental health first aid programs, and this sits alongside our coaching, so we understand the boundary between coaching and when we might have to offer other support to people. We think it's an essential skill for all coaches, leaders and managers. So if you're interested in finding out more about that, jump onto our website and you can also talk to Nick about it on our team. Well, I want to wish you a happy weekend. If you're listening to this on a Friday as normal, then it's the weekend. Most of you are listening to this on a Thursday, which is a little bit odd. We're going to wake up tomorrow and think it's Friday, but not to worry. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I look forward to catching up with you for part 2 of our shifting performance conversations. So thank you for joining me, and I look forward to catching up with you at part 2. I'll say goodbye for now.